Welcome to the Soulful Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Analisa, Broadway actor turned coach for big dreamers. This is a show about choosing to live inside out, becoming sourced from within, and then acting upon your deepest longings. From starting your dream business to starring on Broadway, from sacred activism to being a radiant, aligned parent and everything in between, we will walk the razor's edge of these two seemingly contradictory words, soulful ambition. This podcast is here to awaken the longing in your chest that is so big it threatens to swallow you whole. Because the manifestation of your true desires is your destined path and the medicine and the magic that the world needs. This is Soulful Ambition. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Soulful Ambition. Before we dive into this wonderful episode, I wanted to make sure that you know about the live and in-person workshop. I am coming from Colorado to New York City 2 days only, for a workshop I am co-facilitating with my dear friend and soul sister, Lauren Elise Rogers. She's a certified holistic sex educator, and I'm a soulful ambition coach. And together we are going to tap into and unlock the power of desire. Desires, your deepest longings, your soulful ambition. We'll amplify it. We'll feel into it. We'll do some shadow work around maybe why you're not claiming it to the degree that you want to. And then also we'll tap into your desire, pleasure, sexual energy, which is also creative energy and life force energy, and can be the fuel towards going after your dreams. And not to mention, not just the fuel, but also like more of a state of being. Like, why not be in pleasure more? Why not experience more of that along the way instead of waiting to achieve the thing, right? It's going to be a fantastic 4 hours. 4 hours journaling, moving, reflecting, meditating together. And I know that you will leave different than when you walked in, with some things that you will have shed and let go, the beginnings of new neural pathways forming, an ability to stand in your star power in a way, to a degree maybe you have never let yourself. So I know, big claims, but I just believe in what we are creating and also the souls that are going to come and that are saying yes to this. So you'll also be in the power of that. A really beautiful group. If that's speaking to you, click on the link below and sign up. And if you were like, wait, Analisa, I just tuned in, I didn't know about this, or Analisa, I missed the early bird pricing, make sure that you are receiving my weekly love letter. It's always short and sweet, but you'll never miss out on events, offerings. I occasionally open some one-on-one spots, and that's where they always go first. So would love to have you there, also dropping a link down below if that would serve your life in any way. All right, enjoy this beautiful episode. As always, if it sings to you, if it serves in any way, it helps so much if you would share the show with a friend, if you would subscribe, and maybe even give the show a rating. It would really mean the world. All right, so much love. Enjoy the episode. Oh, I'm so excited to welcome to the recording studio, Greg Wrenn. He is the author of the award-winning Centaur and an associate English professor at James Madison University. He teaches environmental literature and creative writing, where he weaves climate change science into literary studies. He's also an advanced diver and has been exploring coral reefs around the world for over 25 years. And he's here today to talk about his new book, A Memoir of Wonder and Crisis, an intimate, brave work that is not only a queer coming-of-age story, but also a deeply researched account of Greg turning to endangered coral reefs and psychedelic rainforest tea called ayahuasca to heal from complex PTSD. When your PR person reached out to me about having you on the show, this is what I read that I was like, whoa.
What was it?
It's this review, A Brave, Beautiful Testament to Love. Mothership does for coral what Richard Powers, the Overstory, does for trees. And that book was very impactful to me. And of course, then to read on about your trauma and healing and how you went about that. I mean, you didn't even know about the rebrand yet when you were pitched to being on the show.
No, I didn't.
It was like, It was deep in the works. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I want to talk to you tomorrow. And then also, you probably don't know that I have a personal story with this just this last year, really like the last 8 months of going into a very deep postpartum depression. And what worked for me was psilocybin within a week. And so, of course, I had to talk to you. So thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, that gives me chills. That gives me chills because I think about people in my life, ancestors even, who would have really benefited from these medicines, didn't have access to them. There's obviously a stigma attached to them. They're illegal in certain places, and it's such an incredible time that we're living in, that the FDA is nearing approval on MDMA assisted psychotherapy, and then maybe psilocybin assisted psychotherapy too later on. So I'm so glad the mushroom found you.
Oh my gosh.
And your baby, you know. Yeah.
Yes, my whole family.
Your family,
and my clients and this work that I'm doing in the world. I could not have been doing this the way that I was feeling. And it was really, really dark. And so a therapist diagnosed me. I was really feeling a lot of things about having that as a label for myself. And then she said, so working with a therapist alongside, I will recommend getting on an SSRI. It can take some time, she said. It can take some time to find the right one and that it can work. And when she said, months, I knew, I was like, I cannot live like this because it was so dark and scary inside of my head, especially at night, nursing this baby in the middle of the night.
Yes.
And, so my brother, who happens to be a doctor of nursing and a psychiatric nurse practitioner, was like, yes, I agree, but let me send you a different study, and sent me a study on psilocybin and postpartum specifically. And then he found, well, maybe I shouldn't share publicly, but helped me connect with psilocybin.
Yes.
And I ordered it that night and got it a few days later. And within a week, I'm telling you, it was like, I couldn't access those dark feelings, and I haven't since. No. And I used one bottle, like I did like 30 pills over a couple months. So it just, I want to go to all of these places with you. And I'm curious if you would, as maybe sort of like an intention for this time together, to share like, what is your current soulful ambition? Your deepest longing? Don't know the light stuff.
Oh my gosh, no. Hi, nice to meet you. Here's my Akashic map for the next several millennia.
Oh my gosh.
For my soul's journey. So I want to help people. I want to help people. And I don't want to help people in a paternalistic, white man's burden, codependent, fucked up way. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm really interested in giving my readers a taste of what it felt like to be snorkeling and diving the last intact coral reefs on Earth that are threatened and 5 years later, not in such great shape. I want to give them a taste of, if they haven't worked with ayahuasca or been to the Amazon, I want to give them a taste of, I want to put just a little drop of ayahuasca on their tongue, in a sense, so that they understand the incredible healing that this medicine offers folks. And so it's a mission, and it's a mission born out of a recognition of the lives that have been lost. Right? We're in a mental health crisis in this country. As a university professor, I'm on the front lines of that mental health crisis. A lot of us are. And so, while I would never recommend to any of my students to use any of these medicines in a context that was not prescribed or legal or anything like that, I still ache for them, right? And I wish for a society in which these medicines are legal, they are regulated, right? There are certified, credentialed practitioners who are offering these medicines in that safe, legal way. But they've got to be available because people are hurting themselves left and right. I've lost people. You may have lost people. We all know people who have lost people, and not just to suicide, but to the opioid crisis. to even postpartum depression, other things which happen, which really aren't our fault. And it's really hard to take responsibility, actually, for those conditions when we're not given the tools, the evidence-based tools to heal ourselves. So you mentioned you didn't want to wait a long time for those antidepressants, those SSRIs to kick in. So yes, it can take 6 to 8 weeks for those medicines, for those drugs to kick in, if they kick in at all. Whereas ayahuasca, although a much more difficult medicine than an SSRI in terms of the felt experience of it, is a rapid antidepressant, right? It can, like within 24 hours, you can experience those antidepressant effects. That's in a setting that is safe. That's in a setting that is therapeutic. You're not doing this by yourself. You're not brewing it in your garage or in your basement or with the witches around the corner. You need to be doing this with people who know what they're doing, and sometimes that means going to the Amazon to do it. So, but I do look forward to the day. I guess my soulful ambition partially is, yes, it's to help people, and in terms of helping people, it's about connecting them with these medicines in a safe, legal way, advocating for the legalization of these medicines in this way I've mentioned, and then also getting people to wake up to the beauty around us, because as I remind people of that through my words, I'm reminding myself, right? I'm living in a smartphone trance like everybody else. It's just that I know in the back of my mind, there's something so much better. And I have plans to go out into nature once the book is, out and some of the promotion is done. But it's a full-time, screen time job. Yeah. As you might imagine.
Yeah. I was wondering about how all that you've experienced and woken up to is at play right now, as you could be in a very hustle, grind, push
it's hustle
season.
Yes, that's exactly. I'm teaching 3 classes this semester at my university. I'm promoting this book. I've created a very extensive book tour across the country. And I'm doing it because I know that, I think about someone I loved. I think about his name. His name was Brian. And about 10 years ago, he killed himself. And I know in my heart that he would not have killed himself if he had access to these medicines. I feel certain of it. And so it's in his memory and in the memory of my great grandfather, who took his own life, because of PTSD from World War I. It's in his memory too, that I advocate for the legalization of psychedelic assisted psychotherapy.
That's so powerful. I've lost multiple people in my family to suicide, and I'm so sorry. And thank you. And to you as well. And to just so much suffering that's happening right now around us, and anything that we can do to spread other ways and hope. And there are things that we can be doing that so many people don't know about at all. So, which is, I'm so glad to share this with another audience, right? To have more people wake up to, I shared this. Well, 2 things I found really interesting is I had no idea postpartum, people just don't talk about it very much in my life. And I know a lot of moms. And then when I started talking about microdosing, and it's just little sprinkles here and there in conversation. Oh yeah, I do it. Oh yeah, so-and-so does it. I know people who do it. I'm like, well, why? Let's talk about it. Share the wealth. I had no idea it was happening all around me in my town of Castle Rock, Colorado. Some of these suburb moms at the playground, I'm like, wait a second. So powerful. And something else that came up as you were speaking is this in soulful ambition. And the phrase came up, the wounded healer, thinking of the archetype of Chiron and this wounded healer, and how as we heal, that so often becomes our purpose. And that feels very, very real here, and how we keep going when it's hard and when we don't want to show up. so much more than money and fame, and because society says I
Yes.
should.
Well, and this is what Judith Herman, she's the Harvard trauma researcher I mentioned in my book. I mean, she was one of the first people to create this diagnosis of complex PTSD, and she refers to this path of the wounded healer. She refers to it as the survivor's mission. Because if you have experienced unspeakable trauma, unspeakable abuse from which you could not escape, life becomes at times very meaningless because your view of human nature has been seismically altered and tainted. A survivor has to have a mission, and that mission has to take the suffering that they experience, the trauma that they experience, the senseless violence that they were exposed to. They've got to take that and make meaning out of it. There has to be some kind of meaning. There has to be some kind of transmutation of that pain into service. And I don't claim any special powers or any sort of special path. It's just, this is the way it's always been. You take your wounds and you allow those wounds to become the source of your power. And you allow, you find the jewel in the wound. You find the jewel in the wound and you wear it around your neck like an amulet. You don't throw it off. You don't put a Band-Aid on it. You keep it. It's an amulet. It protects you. It's beautiful. It attracts beauty. And it can, so it is really important, I think, to have a survivor's mission, or just to have anyone, even if you're not a survivor, to have a mission. Like, to what are you on earth here to do? It can't be to just like. It can't be it. It can't be it. Or to swipe left or swipe right. It can't. There has to be something infinitely more sustaining and nourishing and generous, like something that is about the collective. And it's so hard to do in our society because we're all looking through these little windows on our screens. And yet that's where we are. I don't live in a cave. I don't live in a hut. Some people do. I do not. I can't. So we have to make do with what we have and try and make meaning and help other people and allow ourselves to be helped by other people, right? Other people have their mission and we need to receive that too. So, as I emailed a colleague of mine this morning, if there's one thing that the Amazon rainforest taught me, it's reciprocity. You speak, but you listen. You take, but you give. And I didn't always know that. I knew that intellectually, but I didn't know that here. So that's part of my soulful ambition.
Oh yeah, that's so beautiful. Yeah. Oh, I want to continue to really learn the receiving piece in a deeply embodied way.
Yes.
Yeah, receiving is hard.
Mm-hmm. Right, being available for other people's love is probably just as hard as extending compassion or extending love to other people. It's really tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I just heard this, I think yesterday. I don't remember where I heard it, but that it's like equally as difficult to live with somebody who can't receive as it is to somebody who can't give or doesn't give. And that one hit me hard as somebody who's like the helper and always doing for others and being the one that's also like, oh, no, I'm fine. And that that really, so just feeling into it deeper as this embodied knowing of reciprocity and that, yes, nature is doing that around us all of the time. And we are.
Yeah. So that's some of the juice, that's some of the juice around the book is stepping out of selfishness, stepping out of addiction, stepping out of just self-centeredness, just plain old self-centeredness, which was a response to what I experienced in childhood. But again, that wasn't my fault, but it's my responsibility. It's my responsibility. It's our responsibility to make the best of the hand that we've been dealt. And of course, there are social, economic conditions that prevent, people from fully doing that. And we're working to change that. This is also about giving people who didn't have a voice, whether it's someone who's a survivor of abuse or it's an indigenous person in the Amazon or it's an indigenous person in Raja Ampat, these islands in Indonesia that I went to, like giving them a seat at the table as our planet is in crisis. Like this is so the book really is meant to highlight these voices, give those people a voice, or bring their voice to a wider audience that they might not otherwise have. And so this is all part of that. And it's tricky, it's tricky to thread that needle in a way that's going to work.
I haven't even said this to you yet, which I should have led with this before we hit record, but I loved reading your book. Thank you so much. I really couldn't put it down. I couldn't wait to read it at night. And it's beautifully written. I think the way you hold wonder and crisis, and the way you hold the both and of like, we are whole, we are complete souls, we are love, and like we need boots on the ground, and we need to take action, and like that, talk about threading a needle. I would just love for you to speak more about this. And I know something that I read is that you tell your students that the ecological is personal and the personal is ecological. And
yes,
any words you want to bring around all of that?
I think of it as a controversial thing to say, like to say to someone, to proclaim, well, we are eternal souls. In the book, I say, we can relax and exalt. We're on this. It's still a gorgeous planet. It's an imperiled planet, but it is fucking gorgeous. And so to on one hand say, embrace the beauty. You're eternal. You're this eternal soul that's incarnating here on Earth for just a brief second. But then also, this is a world in crisis, and you can't relax in a sense, and you've got to work for change. Like that's a paradox that our sort of status quo, media driven consciousness, I don't think it can hold that. It can't hold that because it seems like a way out to say, oh, well, we're eternal souls, so why bother if we're eternal, But then, you can also just get so fixated on the crisis that you get burned out and you become embittered and you get depressed and you get nihilistic, and you might think of, one might think of hurting themselves, if they go down that path too far. And so, I just sort of offer this paradox of we are eternal souls and there's no time to waste to save nature. Like that paradox is just sort of, I just put it at the front of the book and I just say, here it is. If you think this is completely ridiculous, maybe this isn't the book for you. But this is the paradox in a lot of spirituality, right? It's that we have this absolute reality that we are souls, and reality, or the tangible reality, is an illusion. Right, all is Maya, the sages in India say. And so one question that I've heard many spiritual teachers field is, well, if everything is an illusion, then why bother? What's the big deal? And I think that the translation of the word Maya into illusion is a bit of a trap for us, because illusion brings to mind, for me at least, like David Copperfield making the Statue of Liberty disappear, or, a magician pulling a hat out of pulling a rabbit out of a hat. But illusion is just a word we throw around. The reality, I think, is closer to, and this is how I've heard spiritual teachers talk about it, is that this is an infinitely consequential illusion, which doesn't make any sense. So it's not, it's more than even a play, right? You've been on Broadway, it's more than, it's like a play. It's like an illusion. It's like a simulation. It's like a classroom, right? It's a classroom for souls, but it's none of those things. Those are just metaphors. We don't really know what it is. It's just that it's not the end all and be all. It's not the ultimate reality. And so we can hold the very consequential issues and crises of our day a little differently when we when we think in those terms. It's not that those crises, like the climate crisis or the mental health crisis, it's not that they aren't important. It's not that they're not pressing. It's not that your neighbor crying out in the night for your help, that you should ignore that. No. It just means that there's something bigger. There's something more absolute. There's something that is eternal and unchanging. And I don't begin to understand any of it, but I've studied it and I've thought a lot about it, and the medicine has shown me some things around it, but I'm still in kindergarten. But that's the juice. The juice is, I don't have to take life so seriously, and I have to take life seriously. And that paradox is, when you begin to live out that paradox, life changes. It doesn't, it still hurts, but it's just a little bit different. Do you kind of know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's coming in.
I think what comes up for me is my teacher is always talking about the both and.
The both and, yeah.
And that, like, yes, like, this is all spirit. This is all, she doesn't say this word, this is my word, holy, sacred, like, and then at the same time, just like at a more micro level, like the human, like our humanity, our ability to be evil and all the dark, all the depths, that too is all part of the all of everything. But that it doesn't mean, right, that we spiritually bypass and just ignore and just, okay, well, then I can just be terrible because all part of the all of everything. That's what's arising. Yeah. Around that.
Yeah. I'm so glad you kind of brought up the evil part, because it's like, we have an ethical responsibility to this creation. We have an ethical responsibility to one another. We have an ethical responsibility to the illusion. And that doesn't make any sense, but it's still there. And so and I think one of the metaphors that's really helped me is that of the classroom, and that we are here learning. Our souls are learning something. For what? I don't know. We have no idea. But time and time again, mystics, psychonauts, spiritual seekers of all sorts, they've gone into the darkness. They have been absorbed into the oneness. And not too many of them have come back from that, or people who have died and come back. Not too many. I haven't heard of too many who've come back and said, hey guys, we're stuck on a server and we're on an alien spaceship and we're in a computer on that spaceship, and we're just ones and zeros in a server, and we're a video game to these creatures or something. No one's ever said that. Yeah. No one's ever said that. There's something benevolent. There's something good about this. But what it is, what station the train is going to, again, is just beyond, it is beyond me.
Yeah. And so, okay, I would love to ask this question, and then, as you said before we started, like, kind of go into the part 3 a little bit more, perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to name what you shared around. You do speak to the trauma that you experienced, and I mean, it was at times hard to read, and
yes. You're a mom.
What you went, yeah, that's true. Yeah. And what you went through. And, I do just want to echo, like, it is extremely brave. I also think about you being a college professor and all that, as far as you went, like what you shared, and knowing, like, my students are going to read this and this is out there. I just think it's incredible. And, that you do share your story and like the healing that has taken place is truly extraordinary. And so I just wanted to give people a taste of that if they're like, where does he come from that he's talking about all of this and healing? Like, what has he really experienced? Like, pick up the book and read the book. But are there any words that you want to also put around that?
Right. Yeah. We don't want to go. I don't think this is the right forum to, as I know you agree, it's not the right forum to get into the specifics of what I experienced as a child, but it was pretty horrific in a lot of ways. And I also came from enormous privilege. And I came from a family that believed in education, and that in a really weird, twisted way, believed in me. And not everyone has that. Some people have like terrible trauma and then no one believes in them, right? So I did have people who believed in me. I had teachers who believed in me. But yes, I experienced some pretty difficult things as a child, just unusual, kind of bizarre, terrible things. And, but in a sense, they aren't unusual at all. And I think that's why I feel comfortable writing this book and publishing it while I'm a professor, is that I know that my students have also experienced, a lot of them have experienced some pretty crazy shit of their own. And they're more willing to talk about it than maybe previous generations. So in a way, I've learned from them how to be more open about that. So I feel like I've missed the thread of your question.
No, I think if there was just anything else that you wanted to say around that, so that just people could hear your words. But I think that's great. And I love that too, because these are things that, again, can, shame breeds in isolation. And so sharing your story helps other people feel seen and have the courage to share their story, and so on. May it ripple out.
May it ripple out. And that, the reason I went to Indonesia, to these reefs in Indonesia, charging to my visa, charges I couldn't pay off for a long while. The reason I did that is because it was 10,000 miles from my parents.
Wow.
It was 10,000. It was as far away from my parents as I could possibly get, as from where I grew up. But also it was a place of extraordinary beauty. But anyone can, even a potted plant in your house. You may have a really stressful life. You may have an abusive spouse. You may just be in a living situation that is even dangerous. But if you have a potted plant, if you have a tree outside the window, that can be something that can be a being that you befriend. And I know that may sound simplistic, easy for me to say, but I do know that the research has shown over and over that when people develop a relationship with nature, and they're in nature, and by nature, I mean, just being around something alive, even a pet, right, is nature. We benefit. And and in my case, spending so much time underwater with those endangered coral reefs in Indonesia, it ended up giving me the courage to come back. It gave me the courage to stand up to certain people that I needed to stand up to. And that can look like that sort of, that renewed sense of courage, that renewed sense of purpose can come about through nature in a lot of different ways for people. And then eventually that led me to these, to these medicines in the rainforest. Because I was walking a suicidal path, even though I had been in nature and I had immersed myself in it and had done a lot of inner work. Trauma is sticky. It's hard to get rid of. So these medicines offer a way to target those traumatic memories and leach them of the fear, leach them of the panic. And that's what's so exciting about them. And folks can access these medicines. They don't have to go to the Amazon, right? They can, if they live in Colorado, they could probably find a legal practitioner who could offer them psychedelic assisted therapy. And other places, there are a lot of folks who do have a sliding scale. You could even find like a trip sitter, someone that you trust to sit with you as you work with these medicines. But again, vet those people, make sure they're safe, make sure they know what they're doing, make sure it's legal where you are. And your journey isn't going to look like my journey, but that's okay. We all have different journeys. But nature and these medicines, they are available to folks here in the United States, depending on where you are. They are.
Yeah.
And so each person will use their own soulful ambition and their creativity to make it work, because it will find you. If you're ready for these medicines, they will find you. and it will align.
Oh, that's really beautiful. I actually was listening to a podcast today. Are you familiar with Dr. Sarah Gottfried?
No.
She wrote I think it's the autoimmune cure. I'll have to fact check that. But she was saying she's above ground as using psychedelics, and then there's the underground, right?
Yes.
There's both, and she can't really speak to because she's a board certified physician,
right?
But so she was suggesting that she said word of mouth, and also universities, that there are so many. She said, find a trial going on because it's happening all over the country.
Yes.
Which I thought, and I also loved that this doctor was sitting here sharing, she shared this, I have the statistics right here. 2021 randomized trial for people with severe PTSD that 2/3 no longer met the PTSD criteria after 2 to 3 MDMA assisted therapy sessions.
Yes.
2/3, that's 71%. And then versus, and she said this, like, I was like, oh, I'm so glad this is being shared, that the efficacy of talk therapy and SSRIs is about 30.
Yeah.
Like, what? Can you
Why
talk
would we?
To me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, can you, because you share a lot of this in the book, and I think it's, we like the brain food. We like to understand why. Like, you speak so much about neuroplasticity in the book.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I love the phrase, I think is it that you prayed to the Holy Ghost.
Neuroplasticity.
Yeah, which I love. You have this beautiful prayer to like the amygdala and all of the different places that I just loved that so much. And then maybe bringing in as well exercise. There is a towards the end of the book around exercise and intermittent fasting and all of that, and like the correlation between all of those things and neuroplasticity to help inform people.
Oh my gosh, yes. So Rick Hansen, I don't know if folks know Dr. Rick Hansen. He has the Being Well podcast. He has an incredible book, among others, called Buddha's Brain. And he taught me that word, neuroplasticity. And I say in the book that, the two words that I love the most in the English language are neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. Now, neurogenesis seems like it, defies all of our previous understanding of how the brain works. But yes, the brain can create new neurons. New neurons can be born. Not only can those synaptic connections be moved around, not only can the brain become a bit more malleable with psychedelics or chanting or meditation or prayer or other things, but you can actually create new neurons. You could create new neurons, say, in the hippocampus, right, where memories are stored. So in any case, yes, these medicines are they cause these neuroplasticity and neurogenesis add up to a brain that's more coachable, a brain that's more malleable. And when a brain is more coachable and more malleable, then you begin to have options. You have the option to continue to do what you're doing, which you may not want to do, but you can keep doing what you're doing, or you can decide how you want to relate to yourself a little differently. Because as you relate to yourself differently, you're going to relate to other people differently. And then this brings me to something that's maybe even more exciting than neuroplasticity, which is the reopening of critical periods of development. This is what psychedelics can do. And what I mean by that is we have these periods of time in our lives where we are particularly impacted by certain inputs. So I'll give you an example, like a male zebra finch. If it doesn't hear birdsong from an elder in the first 65 days of its life, it will never sing. So on day 69 or 75, if it hears that birdsong, it's not going to work. So there are those particular windows of time where certain inputs are needed for the development to occur. And so for a lot of us, if we grew up in a difficult family situation, we have imprinting from our parents. We have prenatal imprinting from our mothers. And by the way, we could hear our dads, right? We also received imprinting from our dads. through the, uterus, right? Between the outside and inside. So a lot of conditioning happens, of course, with parents. And so we learn what's called social reward learning. Social reward learning, which is, what do I do in this world in order to create good relationships with people? Period. How do I get the love? And so we learn some pretty fucked up ways to do that. And so what psychedelics offer is a way to reopen that critical period. And if we are in a safe, secure setting before, during, and after our psychedelic experience, we're getting the inputs that we needed but never got. And those inputs, that love, that support, that learning reciprocity, right? Learning give and take, that we can actually relearn that and internalize that. And in my case, I experienced the internalization of new parents from the medicine. Like, that's what the medicine instilled in me, is a new mom, spoiler alert, a new mom and a new dad inside of me. And I know that sounds bizarre to some, but we all carry internalized models of our parents in our brains. We all have that. And in my case, the medicine replaced, or largely replaced, that of my parents with its own. And that is hard to believe, but so much of this is grounded in the science, which is still ongoing. But it's Gould Dolan is the name of the researcher. She's now at UC Berkeley, and she's given MDMA to octopuses, right? Octopuses are these solitary, territorial, mean, 8-legged cephalopods, right? But when you give them MDMA, they come together and they cuddle, and they'll cuddle the researcher. They'll caress the researcher instead of biting them with their beak. I mean, so she's done Gould Dolan has done some incredible research. And then MAPS too, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Science. They've run these MDMA psychotherapy trials for the FDA, and they've done such important work, for that. So these are exciting times. But yes, neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, almost sounds like the first book of a new Bible. Neurogenesis for Gaia, right? And the reopening of critical periods of development. This is what gives me hope. Right? That we can change. We can change. It's not just a slogan in the break room at work that says persistence pays off or whatever. And there's a picture of a beaver or something with its dam. We really can change. Humanity can change, and it can learn to live in harmony with the earth and with amongst ourselves. And there are lots of ways to go about it. Psychedelics aren't the only way, because again, you can take the psychedelic, but what kind of inputs do you have before, during, and after the ceremony? If you have the wrong inputs, if you're in a cult situation, forget it. Was it Charles Manson who gave his followers LSD to brainwash them? I mean, you've got to have the right inputs. There's a lot at stake here, but there's a lot of hope. There's a lot that gives me hope.
Yeah.
There is a way out.
It's really incredible. And I just think of all of the hours, all of the money, all of the years spent of people's lives talking about the traumas, talking about what's wrong. Right? But that's a different part of the brain that you're talking about it and trying to implement, behavioral changes, but like your behavior is being governed by your emotional body, and everything's being governed by a different part of your brain, and just that dissonance there. And I'm just so this is so new to me. This is like the last year.
Oh, this is new. All pretty new to you.
Yes. And then also the embodiment and somatics. That's been more the last kind of 18 months that I've gone into moving energy in my body, and the things that have changed because I'm like, let me dance this emotion instead of try to understand what's happening. And
yes.
Well, I'm thinking that because when I was 10, my dad said he would come to my play, but didn't come. And people always leave me. Right. And instead, if I just like dance and growl and roar my fear and like in 5 minutes, there's a shift.
Yeah.
And so I wondered if you wanted to bring in that element of when you began to move your body with ayahuasca.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, first, before I talk about the dancing, which I'm really looking forward to talking about with people. Yes. Talk therapy is just that, talking. We can talk all day long, but at the end of the day, it feels good for about, 2 or 3 hours. There's some relief from venting, but really we're just rehearsing the same script. And so it was so humbling and so, it made me mad, right? When facilitators would tell me less talking, more feeling, right? These curanderos, these healers are really not interested in your story. They're not interested in your abuse. They're not interested in your trauma. That's just not the worldview that they're operating from. They're interested in who you are beyond your thoughts. Who are you beyond your thoughts? And even thinking about your thoughts, like, why are you thinking these thoughts? Like these thoughts of hurting yourself, right? These thoughts of that life is, that we're all doomed and it's all going to hell in a handbasket and we're all fucked anyway. Who cares about anything? Why are you even thinking those thoughts? That's just garbage. That's just garbage and needs to be treated as garbage. Yes, bow to it, as they say. Bow to it. We love you. Thank you for your input. Now go. Like it really, I think that is a huge part of, of this work is what you're talking about, where you're just resisting the urge to think so much. And if you are thinking, you're being a lot choosier about what you're thinking. You're being a lot choosier with what you say, and you're being a lot choosier about with how you conduct yourself in the world. But speaking of conducting yourself in the world, one of the healing modalities that I talk about in the book is called Umbandaime. And this comes out of Brazil. And I've worked with several teachers in Brazil. And the gist of it is you ingest ayahuasca and you dance. You dance after you dance when you're under the influence of ayahuasca, like the backlog of garbage in our bodies, right? The stored trauma. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like all these knots, all these things that we don't even know are there. So after we've ingested the ayahuasca and our critical periods have been reopened and our brain is more coachable, more malleable, sometimes traumatic memories come up because of the medicine. That's one of the effects of it. It has an anti-amnesic effect, right? It helps you remember things. As the medicine does its work, you've got a lot of stuff going on in your body. What a blessing to be able to get up and move with purpose and move in ways that you never thought you could move or deserved to move, right? What is it like to move and dance in the presence of your brothers and sisters and not be afraid the way that you've always been afraid? What is it like to be in a silent community of bodies that are having their process and moving through time and space together with the same purpose, which is to awaken to love. That is really, really special. And so those ceremonies have been very, very special to me as someone who has experienced sexual abuse in the past, to be able to be around people and not be as afraid, or to be around people, to move with people in the world in silent fellowship and relate and express myself in a new way, right? In a way that maybe feels more vulnerable, but that's perfectly acceptable. It's just my mind that says it's not, So, and it's a bit like those videos on YouTube you can watch of the gazelles that have almost been attacked by a cheetah, and they're scared shitless after the cheetah leaves, of course. And what do? They shake it, right? Yeah. And they shake it off, and then they move on. They go on their merry way. I don't know if it's as easy as that. But it's certainly a lot easier with Umbandaime to shake off that trauma and to claim your space, and not see your embodiment as a mistake, right? When your body has been messed with, right? If there hasn't been consensual touch, you might resent your body. You might be numb to your body. And so what is it like to not be numb? What is it like to reclaim your space, to reclaim the fullness of your very, very, very temporary, very precarious embodiment? It's really neat. It's really neat.
Oh, okay. I'm sold. I'm going to do this. Put it on my bucket list, because I've done the dancing, and I've moved in the last couple of years in a way that I haven't, and it's been life-changing without a medicine, a plant medicine or anything, but a hell of a lot of ritual and intention. And, even I have not experienced what you have, but I feel like we all have this like societal trauma. Like,
oh my gosh,
my body's not okay. My body's never been enough. Like, I hate my body. I feel like until I started this work, I was living from my neck up. And so to reconnect in this way and find freedom, and it felt so weird when I started, and I felt like, what am I doing? And I don't know how to do this, and I can't do this. And my teacher kept saying, like, let the mind go. Your body knows what to do. Let the mind go. Your body knows what to do. And that just became like my mantra as I would move, and it's been so healing.
Amazing. And you as a Broadway actor, like, people may have looked at you and thought, oh my gosh, she's so embodied. She's so in her being. And little did they know that, you were also,
war.
feeling at war. And, and something that one of my teachers told me, I was telling her about how concerned I am about the planet, how concerned I am about the future of our species. And I said, I'm just really afraid. This was during a ceremony. And she looked at me, and without skipping a beat, she said, Greg, we're all afraid. We're all afraid. And when I say we're all afraid, it doesn't matter your political orientation. You have different reasons to be afraid. If you're, say, of a different political orientation, but you're still afraid. You're still concerned for your family. You're still concerned about the future. You're still, yes. And so you may not be worried about climate change, but you're maybe worried about other things. Or maybe deep down, even though you'd never admit it, that we're living on borrowed time. That we're living on a planet whose long-term habitability is uncertain. I think we're all metabolizing that and dealing with that in different ways. And so, yes, societal trauma, like the trauma of living on a planet like ours, in a society like ours, and where it's not clear. It's not clear what the way forward is. It's not clear what our roles should be. It's not clear always what the right thing to do is. We can't even agree what the right thing to do is. And so, what could be more fear-inducing than living in a village like that? Who would want to live in a village like that, where this guy thinks the Earth is flat, and the person in the hut over thinks we're reptilians or whatever, and then this other guy thinks the village chief stole the election, and that wouldn't be a 120 person village either you or I would want to live in. And so, we're afraid. And it's in our bodies.
So every time I'm like, I think this is where I want to go next. You take us there. which is so cool. We're in sync over here.
Yes.
Because I was going to say, of course, we could talk for another hour, but I want to make this digestible for folks that don't have 4 hours to listen. But I wanted to ask, like, I get so overwhelmed, as everybody does. Okay, our world, our earth is in peril, and it can get so overwhelming. And when I think about what the state of the planet will be when my sons are 30, right? But this is going to be a selfish question. Like, if there are 3 things that you were like, we all have to trust ourselves. We all have to listen to ourselves because we all need to be doing different things. So I honor that. But if there are 3 things that you were like, I just wish everybody would do these 3 things. Are there 3 things? Yeah. Or 5?
Yeah. Well, I'd say the first one is, so what you're really talking about, I think or I hear you kind of talking about eco-anxiety, or maybe another way to put it is eco-anguish. Anxiety is sort of seems like a narrow thing but there are lots of emotions involved in what you're talking about as you contemplate your son's future. So the first thing I would say to deal with eco-anxiety or eco-anguish is you've got to meditate on the impermanence of all things, right? It doesn't matter what age, what planet you live on in this time-space reality, you are going to die. And you can die from a forest fire, from a climate change-induced forest fire, or you can die of old age surrounded by the people you love in a well-lit room in your house. But in any case, you're going to die. And so I'll say for myself, what's really helped me is meditating on the impermanence of all things, meditating on the fact that I am going to pass on. And also related to that is getting in touch with that eternal part of you, that part of you that is imperishable, the part of you that is pristine, the part of you that is eternal, the part of you that's pure love, independent of situations and excuses. Finding your way to touch into that, feeling into that eternal part of you. And then I think another part is service, because what we really have to do is dismantle the fossil fuel companies. These motherfuckers, excuse my language, who tried to convince us that our personal carbon footprint was responsible for the mess we've gotten ourselves into. And that is a bald-faced lie. They are responsible. They are responsible. They have had these misinformation campaigns since I was born to try and, when you actually could have done something about global warming.
Right.
So we have to also, work to dismantle some of these systems. There is a boots on the ground kind of sacred activist path that the book is definitely plugging into. So yeah, I would say there's a spiritual kind of mental practice that goes on in terms of touching into the sacred, touching into the eternal, meditating on death, but then also doing what you can to help. Doing what you can to help. So I hope that gives folks, and you, I know this is a question you had, just some sense of what they might be able to do. So it's tricky. Yes.
Somebody was like, yes. Ask yourselves, like, what's calling you? What's feeling true in this regard? Because it is so easy to just go, well, there's just nothing I can do. And we need everybody to wake up to. No, there's something that everybody can do. And what is that for each of us individually?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And really returning to, I think a lot of this involves returning to what we already know, right? What we already know, what indigenous cultures have known for forever, for tens of thousands of years, which is love Pachamama, love the earth. There's got to be reciprocity. Yes, we have to take, we consume, but we give back. And so, we can't, I don't want anyone to think that I'm, these sort of insights that I'm having in the book, these are not original insights about caring for the planet. This is something that indigenous elders have been teaching for forever. And so I think that we really need to bring indigenous leaders to the table. They need to be having a voice in a lot of these decisions and in a lot of these just conversations, because it's arrogant otherwise, not to do that. And to think about also the people who are going to be most affected by climate change.
Right.
Those folks are living in the developing world. They are brown and black people, right? They don't have access to resources the way that we do here. And so, they also need a place at the table. And I keep asking who's got them in mind? Who's got them in mind, especially those folks in the world who are living in low-lying places. As the sea levels rise, who's thinking about them? And I've tried to highlight their plight and give some voice to them when I'm in Indonesia. But that's and that's, I guess I could say, I'm using my privilege, right? The privilege that all the privileges I've been given, I'm trying to use it to give other people who don't have as much of a voice to at least give them a way to offer their story and to at least bring their problem, the predicament that they're in, to the mainstream. And that's, of course, a thorny, difficult thing, but I think it's important. It's risky not to talk about it. Mm. It's risky to talk about it, but it's also risky not to talk about it. So here I am. So
yeah. Well, I hope everybody picks up a copy of Mothership. I already
Thank you.
I want to send it to. I wish you all the best on this tour and it coming out. And I will absolutely be keeping up with you and seeing. I can't wait to see how it's going and how can people best find you, follow you, find your book?
Well, they can definitely go on my website, Greg Wrenn, GregWrenn, or they can find me on Instagram, Greg J. Wrenn, on there. And on my website, I actually have resources for people who are interested in giving back to the Amazon, helping indigenous communities in the Amazon and in Indonesia. There are mental health resources on my website too, if you feel like you're really struggling. So there's a kind of a portal on my website, which I'm developing, that people can access. So they can stay in touch with me that way.
Beautiful. Yeah. Awesome. That'll all be linked below.
Great.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. This was
Thank you, Analisa. Thank you so much.